Well, we are joined again by Emira Woods, co-director of Foreign Policy and Focus at the Institute for Policy Studies. And Emira, welcome once again. You saw what our young colleague said there about the situation in Tunisia, but now in your assessment, coming out of this situation, coming out of the kind of chaotic situation it was, what kind of challenges does a country like Tunisia face?
Well, let's remember this all began December 2010 with one person, a 27-year-old Mohamed Bouazizi, basically saying enough is enough. He took his life in his own hands and ignited a revolution, not only in Tunisia, but in Egypt and in many countries around the world. I think what is needed now is understanding that pressure, particularly the pressure from a global economy that's not working for the majority of people on this planet. Remember, we hit that number, 7 billion just this week of people on this planet, but the masses are not having their basic needs met by the global economy. That is the frustration that has, coupled with political repression, ignited movements of people for a different way. So when we think about places like Tunisia, we have to understand that addressing the economic marginalization of people, as well as addressing the political marginalization of people. Both of those needs need to be met in a new Tunisia.
Now, Tunisia, I guess, presents an example of what was called a successful Arab Spring. They protested for a new government. Ben Ali is gone, and now here they are, having already held an election. We're waiting on Egypt and, of course, Libya. What do you think is the example that Tunisia presents in terms of what smoothed the process?
Well, if you think about how Tunisia started, it was one individual igniting a movement that was peaceful. From the start, the people of Tunisia said this would be a movement that uses civil disobedience, but that is peaceful. It went over then to Egypt, where there the opposition as well said, we will use nonviolent means.
But in Egypt and Libya, the leaders resisted. Did that delay
the resistance
process?
Absolutely changed the process. But at the same time, when in the middle of Tunisia and Egypt, you have Libya, and Libya, you know, the opposition decided very early on that they needed the international intervention. Yeah. It changes entirely the calculus, and it also makes the recovery and also the national healing that's needed much more complicated.
Yeah, very quickly, do these freedoms that are so sudden present also a challenge?
Well, I think democracy is never easy, right? It's a complicated process. It's people expressing freely their will, expressing their demands, and particularly when it's been such a closed space for so long, it will be complicated. It may not be the leaders that, let's say, NATO, the US, the West would want to emerge in Tunisia or in any of those countries, but it must be, after so many years of repression, the leaders that people are able to freely choose and then hold accountable.
Thank you. I wish we had more time with you,
Thank
Emira.
you so much, Emira.
Thank you.
Well, Emira, we want to thank her very much for joining us here today on In Focus. She's co-director of Foreign Policy in Focus at the Institute for Policy Studies here in Washington, D.C.